Welcome to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. We got a special show today. It's me. A lot of people have been telling me they like the individual shows where I just paint and sort of get a more detailed painting. So we're going to squeeze more of those in as often as we can and give you a good example. We can finish quite a bit of a painting and talk about some good philosophy and all the things that happen in our life, in our community. We got a great show coming up. The next one after this is we're going to be talking. Our Salvation Army's left one of our communities, and we're working with a group that's going to be helping them, so you'll get to hear about that on the next episode. But today we're going to get started. We all had a big letdown right across the country, of course, with our baseball, for those who were watching the Blue Jays, and so close, so many innings that were like, you know, just a detailed, close touch away, just like a painting. Sometimes the just smallest little thing can change everything, the whole picture. And but it's really, I got thinking about it the next morning, even though it was sad and you go through that whole emotional down, like, oh, we didn't get the World Series. But really, it's all about that journey to think of all the people. I'm not much of a regular baseball guy during the regular season, but even I got caught up in the whole dream that they had, and these guys seem like a special group. And I wanted to write a poem based on that. So it starts out like this. It goes, "Not today, but victory when it comes is but a single heartbeat, brilliant then gone. The journey is what endures. Each loss is a vow, again and again, until the pinnacle is reached, until victory itself weeps in our arms. Celebrate not just the finish, but the footsteps, every stumble, every doubt, every moment that dared us to quit. For greatness is not found in the final ending. It lives in the courage to return again and again and again, believing that the climb is worth the effort." And that's what it's really all about. That climb brought so many people together and inspired so many and so many moments. And I was thinking, me and my brothers haven't actually sat down to watch something together in I don't know how long. But we all sort of gathered as a family and spent some time together in a unit. And so I want to thank you know, the whole World Series just did that for families and people, and we wonder sometimes what it's all about, but anything that brings us together is an amazing thing. So we're going to work on a painting today. The weather's getting colder. This morning I felt chilly when I got up, and I thought, what am I going to do today? I'm going to do something special. I tried to think on my way in. Snow scenes, but how can I make them simple enough that people will understand the concept? So we're going to work on a simple process. We're going to take a few little things, a palette like this, put it up in my screen here. Sean will probably click in, give you an idea. We got some cadmium orange and cerulean blue, little fire engine red, and some white. And we're going to start with just some basic blue and white, which anybody can do. Just taking a regular brush. And we're just going to add some blue on one side of our brush and some white on the other, and start painting that around. Throwing it into the canvas. A little blue and white, mixing it right on the canvas. Now I'm not trying to mix it all together so it's one particular color. I'm just throwing a little bit of it all over the canvas. Now we're going to take another brush. Now a lot of artists, you'll buy expensive brushes, and they got rounded edges, and they're really good at working, but you know, if you haven't got a whole lot of cash and you're starting out as an artist, I got this brush at the dollar store. It's like a makeup brush women use to put on, you know, make their skin a little fluffy. And I find it works just as good, and it's amazing at softening things up. If you take that brush and lightly, I'm not putting any pressure on the brush at all, I'm just lightly touching it, and you sway it around, you start to get this beautiful sort of feel. If it's not still a little bit stiff, you can take a touch of water, put it in, water softens it right up. Look at that. Now we're getting a nice soft feel. Not a lot. If you put too much water, you start pulling it and the paint mixes together, loses all its concentration, and it doesn't look bright and cheery. So you want to, just a little bit of water. As dry a brushes as you can, just enough to make the paint move. And we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep adding some blue and white. Nice and light. Doesn't take much when you start to paint. And the real secret to painting is in the touch. So I notice with a lot of my students, when they're coming to my class, they'll get on and they'll paint over and over, and they'll rub and they'll rub and they'll rub. What should take 5 minutes, they'll be spending 15 minutes on, and they end up turning the whole section that they're working on into mud, or their brush gets all stiff and not good, when all you're doing is touching, letting the paint do the work. Monet understood when he was trying to explain his painting that the mind is what paints. What we want to do is put enough color and enough information on the canvas to get the mind to start painting. So I'm not really trying to paint clouds. I'm trying to see what appears. Let my mind start painting and see what I see. Just a basic premise. Just one little bit at a time. And I'm not trying to cover everything, just throwing some blue and white and seeing what happens. Now, they can't get any easier than that. I mean, who couldn't do that? Who couldn't rub some blue and white on a canvas? I haven't done anything special. A couple spins of the brush, a couple of swipes here and there, soften things up. Look at that, nothing to it. And that's one of the first things we try to teach, is to learn to let go, to just kind of let your brush do the work, throw a little paint on, and then sit back and take a look at what's happening. And already I can see some swirls in the skies as it starts to dry. Isn't that beautiful? It's just like your life. Sometimes things go wrong. They go terribly wrong. We get working on something thinking, oh, I'm finally getting there, and something comes and tears the whole thing down. I mean, just when you thought, you know, it couldn't go better. I finally made it. I'm getting something right. Life has a way of throwing something at you like, no, you don't. It's not going to be that easy. But if you look around, think about that baseball game. At every moment, I mean, there was a hit out to the field, was inches away from the top of the fence, and one of the players knocked over his own player jumping up to make the most spectacular catch you'd ever see. And except for his concentration and that little 1 inch and that extra effort he put in, that special effort, that ball wouldn't have been caught. It would have bounced off, made a double, changed the whole game, and gave the other team a chance to win. So everybody awed, and you know, it'll be highlighted on reels for many nights to come about the spectacular catch that actually his name was spelled Pages, P-A-G-E-S, but they pronounced it different. It was a Spanish name. What a beautiful catch if you get a chance to watch the highlights. It was something spectacular, but that's what I'm talking about, inches. It's the same thing in painting. That little effort sometimes, just throwing in something extra that a lot of my students, they'll get to a place, say, oh, that looks okay, or I'm okay with that, I'm done, instead of spending that time to go the extra effort. Even when you're preparing a painting, I can see the difference between one student and another in my class. One will, they'll spend time doing this perfect drawing and laying it out perfect, changing things around. And I've often said the most important thing, even the beginning process, when you're doing your sketch, whether you're transferring or doing a freehand sketch or whatever you're putting down that you're going to lay your paint over, the better job you do of laying out what you want, the better your painting's going to be. And I had this open class where you could paint whatever you wanted, and a few people had come in with pictures of Jesus, and people had come in with pictures of their dog, and one with their grandchildren. I thought, oh, how am I ever going to get to this? But the lady with the dog she was painting for her friend, she started to paint away, or do the first sketch of her dog. And I said, really, that's what you want to go with? She was just transferring from a sketch of this person's dog she was helping out onto the canvas. And I said, well, you're doing it as transfer. It's not even a drawing, so there's so much more detail there you could transfer in to work from. I said, your initial drawing should look so good that you don't want to paint over it like you like the drawing. That's how much work you should put in right from the start, and the effort. So she redid it, and she kept going. And then at the end, she said, oh, I don't want to paint over this. And I said, well, now that's where we begin. Now you've put the work in to put the effort forward. So that's the difference. And other students will just throw some things on and say, oh, yeah, this is good enough. It's going to have paint on it anyway, and make excuses why not to do the extra work. they know who they are if they're watching in and tuned into the show. We know we're all a little bit different. But that extra effort, that extra thing, just like that catch Pa has made in the baseball game, huge difference in the game. Now later on in the game, there was a throw to home plate. And what a throw. And the umpire had to make this call. He caught the ball at the exact same time the other player's foot was coming across the base. And he had lifted his foot off the bag and then stepped back down. And only with, cameras that could zoom in and focus and stop play could they actually figure it out later on whether it was actually close or not close. But at the time, it seemed controversial, like, oh, looked like the runner had made it, but he didn't make it. But that extra effort to step down to force himself, or the runner had made one more step a little quicker, would have changed the whole outcome of the game. So every time you're going to do something, whatever the effort, the more effort you put in, the more likely, life, like sports, like anything, is inches away. It's this close to our face. And if we're digging and crawling towards that little bit more effort, it's incredible what can happen. So think about that the next time you're sort of lazing at something, thinking, oh, this is good enough. Is good enough ever really good enough? Really, you should be saying, is this the best I could have done? Is there anything else I can do to get this prepared, to be ready to go? And that's hard to do, but successful people do it. There's a lot to be said about that. So I thought I'm going to throw some red and orange up into this painting today just to fire it up a bit. Let's get a big orange sky going. I'm just going to throw some orange in and see what happens. A little orange and white. When you mix orange and white, you start to get a whole different look. And maybe we'll have a little river coming down across a field. Once when I was a young kid, I fell into a really, really smelly septic tank. I was young, I was running through a field, and imagine, that's not the way you want to go. Imagine that, falling down and running through the field, and I fell into this river of whatever it was, smelly stuff. And everybody was like, oh my goodness, they pulled me out and had to take a big bath. But at the time I had an aunt who's gone now, God bless her, but she was a beautiful soul, and she laughed and she smiled and she said, you know what? That happens to a lot of people, that field. They got to put a fence up there. But she said, after you get all cleaned up and they took care of me, she said, there's a special treat we always do when that happens to people. And she knew I loved pancakes. And she made me these great, giant Aunt Jemima type waffle pancakes that were, to this day, I don't know how old I would have been at the time, 6 or 7 years old. I still can remember sitting down and eating those pancakes as if it was yesterday. It was like every dribble, every mouthful. And I never forgot her and that special moment and that special thing she did for me and made me feel good. Everybody else had a good laugh at the moment, but I never remembered any of them. All I remembered was how she made me feel. And that's how we got to go about our days every day, trying to figure out what we can do, that little bit of effort for everybody that's around us to make them feel a little bit, special about their moments and their days. So I'm looking at this canvas going, I hate it, right? Which often happens. You start with a picture and you think, this isn't going anywhere for me. I don't like this at all. So what do you do when life's not going right or not going the way you want? Clean things up. I usually take my hands, wash my face. I used to be a pool player when I was a young man, and I remember seeing this old movie with Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason called The Hustler. And Paul Newman comes in, particular scene, and he's going to beat the champ. He's struggled across town. He's the best in the world. He's going to do it. He's going to finally beat this old hustler, Minnesota Fats. And Minnesota's there, and Paul gets up at the table and he starts playing the game, and he's doing great. He's beating him up and he's being smart aleck, and he's like, oh yeah, I knew I could beat him, kind of thing. Minnesota, the older guy, wiser, is just biding his time, and they're each having a little shot of whiskey and doing their thing. And next thing you know, Paul's getting a little tipsy and a little over the top, a little full of himself, a little overconfident. And Minnesota goes into the washroom and he washes up his face, and he comes out, fixes up his suit a bit. In those days they wore suit and ties, and they weren't sloppy like we are now. They kind of, even playing pool, they were dressed up. Imagine snooker players. And he comes out and he's ready to go. This is hours into the game, And the young guy starts falling apart, and the older, wiser guy starts putting the game together and wipes him out for everything he has. So he had learned a valuable lesson that day. You know, if you know where things are going and you know in the end where you're going to get, you can sort of see the things in front of you. So it's all about preparation. When things are falling apart, you can think back in my life, well, remember that time I couldn't afford my rent, you know, many years ago, or my car kept breaking down and smashing, or I was really sick. I was going through a surgery and I never thought I'd get better. There's so many things that people go through in their life. And on the other side, years later, there's something else they're going through. None of those things matter anymore. But at the time, we feel like that's all there is in the world, is that particular problem. And the worst part about it is the thinking we do on it. We spend our time thinking, oh, this is so terrible, it's so terrible, I'm never gonna get through this, it's gonna be awful. And if we could get back just some of that thinking time, the time we waste about something that never even happens, we've stressed about, how am I gonna fix this, how that's gonna work? Does that ever work? It never gets you anywhere, does it? Go back at it, take a fresh look at it and say, okay, that didn't work, everything fell apart, wasn't quite like I thought it was gonna be. But what can I do today? Where can I start from and how can I build it up? So I even in this painting, I didn't like all that red, so I grabbed some white, cleaned up my brush, washed up my face, and we'll get started again. And I'll throw in some white. Now I'm liking it. I'm thinking, oh, this is more of a misty kind of field. I'm going to throw it right up into the top of the clouds. Throw some of that blue right over the top. And all of a sudden, I'm liking the sky now. Now it's starting to have a feel. It's starting to tell me something. I'm starting to feel like, well, what's going to happen here? I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that river, make sure it's not a brown river. we want a nicer river in this one, not one you'd fall into as a young kid. I don't know if my mom or well, my brothers weren't alive at the time. Well, my mom will remember that incident. And she might have a good laugh if she sees this particular show. And she'll think, I can't believe you told him that on TV, Rob. I tell everything. I got nothing to hide. Why not? That's life. We all fall into it once in a while. I won't say the word because we're on TV, but once in a while we all fall into it a little bit. It happens. There. So we got a little river going on. We're going to add a little snow to it. Pull down into the river. Look at that. We're going to take a short break. I don't know what we'd have as an announcement after this, but something special. On the other side of that, we're going to come back and tell about how we got out of the river and everything gets a little bit better. Well, welcome back to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. And we're adding some snow alongside of our river. So whenever you're painting, a lot of people will paint, and I'll say, oh, put a white snowbank here, and they'll go like this. They'll just go back and forth, and that's not painting. That's brushing a house wall with some paint. Painting is thinking about the shapes and the size. So if I'm painting the curves on a snowbank, what do I want to do? I want to go down the curve into the snow, down the curve, paint a little bit of a hill, down the curve. Now, it's pretty white, so I'm going to add some blue into that white, because our sky is a little bit of red left on my brush. That's good. Sky's red, so we're going to add that color into the snowbank. Let's start sort of fluffing that up. And we always want to be thinking about perspectives. We want wide at the foreground, and it's moving back to something really small. So we're always thinking about that. So I'm even going to widen this up, make it more dramatic. Maybe put a little patch down here. Look at that. I've almost made it as wide as the whole foreground of the page. Go back and forth, add a little in. Now let's add some of that orange that's up in the sky. Sort of get that flowing down through our river. And again, when we're doing a reflection, we want to paint downwards and then just softly touch it. So that, remember that when you're doing a reflection, just go a little bit down, creating something in the water, then softly touch. Easy. Everybody can paint down and up. So painting can't be that hard, right? Really, when you think about it. Even certain things you're painting, people say, oh, I can't paint faces, or I can't paint. Everything is shapes and forms, and we start out by blocking it in, giving ourselves something to work with, and then we work ourselves down to the details. So I'm adding in some colors of the sky. Maybe we'll put a reflection. We got a little light up here. Put a little reflection of that in the water. And we'll move out of there. I was in a coffee shop this morning, and there's a fella I always meet up with, a real nice guy. I don't think he ever gets to watch the show. He just says he doesn't have a TV in his room. And he's an older fella, and he always comes by and cheers me up. He's always got something to say and talks a lot about hockey or different things. And today he always calls me brother. He says, Robbie, he says, he's my brother. And there's an old song that says, he's my brother. So he sort of glimpses at that song. He says, you remember that old song? And tells me each time. And all he wanted to do was go for a ride and see his old hometown. So I was thinking today, you know, there's so many little things we can do. So sometime next week, when I get a chance, I want to go up with my friend Maisie and maybe take him out on a drive and let him see where he used to live when he was a kid and grew up. And I think that would be an awesome thing. Imagine what you can do for somebody if you just listen to what they're saying and they're telling you their story. How much impact and difference you can make in someone's life. A cup of coffee, a donut, you know, even just conversation sometimes. The fact that you pay attention to them really makes them feel good. You know, everybody wants to feel loved and important. Life is a balance. How do I explain this? You got to have hope and you got to have faith. But it's this year, I've had a great friend who was an angel who helped me with so much stuff, and I've also I have this TV show and people are loving it, and it's helping impact the community and makes so much difference for different charities and different people and individuals. And personally, I'm also going through. I've got some sicknesses going on. I've got some different. I've gone through 3 cars in the last 4 months, and I got up last night and I was in the middle of the night. I was like, oh, is this ever going to end? You know, I need a break. And then I remembered this morning when I woke up with the biggest smile, thinking about how great my life is. It doesn't matter. Each time I've had a tragedy over the last year, always got taken care of. Something was there to help. It was like an angel, like blessings, like things just impacted me in a way that I thought, what do I got to complain about? You're still helping people, you're still making a difference, and you're getting better, your health, you're working on it, and you've now I eat healthier, I live healthier, I'm spending more time with family, whether it's watching a baseball game like the World Series that's come along, or even through sickness, family has sort of had to spend more time together talking to each other about, you know, the future and what we're going to do, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a juxtaposition or a yin and yang, I guess you could say, of going back and forth. But the one thing I always think about is hope, you know, like the young guy in the coffee, or he's not young, like the man in the coffee shop, or myself, when somebody gives me hope or I give him hope. I think it was Emily Dickinson's poem is like, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. It sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. I've heard it in the chilliest land and from the strangest sea, but never in extremity as hope ever asked a thing of me. And it's so true. When we give hope to people, the world changes. So ask yourself each morning, you know, what did I do yesterday? Who did I come across? You know, was it a family member? Was it a stranger? But who did I come across? And did I make a difference in their life in any way? Was I kind to them? Was I nice? Did I lose my temper? Did I fall apart? Did everything collapse and I, you know, went to a place where I couldn't control what was inside? There's an old, I read the Tao Te Ching every day. There's a fellow, he's gone now. He used to do, Wayne Dyer was his name. He would do a different skit every time. He studied the Tao for a year, gave his interpretations on things. And there's a story he gives about an orange. So think about an orange. If you put an orange in your hand and you squeeze it hard as you can, what comes out? Orange juice, right? Now, what if you said, I really want to get pineapple juice? So you squeezed really hard, and you try to get some pineapple juice out of there. Can you get pineapple juice out of that orange? No. What about blueberry juice or any other kind of juice? The only thing that comes out of that orange is orange juice. And why is it that you can only get orange out of an orange juice? Orange juice out of an orange. It's because it's what's inside. So if we take that analogy, and the Tao says, that what we put inside is what comes out. What's inside of us when somebody squeezes us? When you fall sick, or your car breaks, or something happens, you lose your job, what comes out of you? Is it anger? Is it despair? Is it tears? What is it that you're building inside of you? What kind of juice are you putting inside your body each day? Now, if you're out helping change the world and working in soup kitchens and analyzing people, and you're dealing with these kinds of problems all the time, you get a whole different perspective of what the world is and how people overcome, and you start to build inside something that helps you overcome your tragedies and your ideas. And when things happen and you get squeezed like that orange, when they start to squeeze you, what comes out? Does anger come out? Does fear come out? Or does love come out? What are you building inside of you? Think about that tomorrow when you're getting up out of bed, starting your day, and you're trying to figure out, what do I say for a prayer, or what do I do to make this day a little better? Start thinking about what you're filling your insides with. Is it love? Is it joy? Is it beauty? I think I'll put my glasses on so we take a little look at this painting here, see where we're going. Well, I think we're going to put some grass and some trees. So I don't like the grass, so what am I going to do? I'm going to put some snow over the grass. I didn't like quite how it was coming out. Try putting it in a different way. Maybe it was that particular brush. Maybe sometimes you got the wrong brush. You put something in, but there's no use doing it over and over, no use sweating it out, thinking, oh, what am I going to do? This is so terrible. Take it out. Grab a different brush. Try something different. Let's try it even a little darker. Let's throw a little Payne's gray instead of just straight brown. Maybe it was the color. Maybe it was the brush. Maybe it was the color. Let's try a little bit of this. Yeah, I kind of like that better. It's thinner. This brush puts it on a little thinner. I can turn it sideways. I can play with it more. Oh, I like that much better. Maybe I want a reflection of that grass coming down into the water. Much better. So just by altering something, giving it a little different twist, a little turn, that which was a tragedy can all of a sudden be turned into a new leaf, something new and more exciting. Look at that, I like that. Now we want shadows in the grass, especially when you're up close. You really want to see some of that light impact you. So we're going to put a lot of dark right down in the front here, just to make it a bit interesting. You ever think about what you might see on the water? You're going through the woods and there's a bird out there, or a crane, or something unique. Often I'll go up to the ocean to write poetry or prose and be sitting there, and some bird or some crane or a heron will just show up and appear. And the beauty of it, even though you've seen it a dozen times or so, it just feels special in that moment. I was traveling up to the bay, and as I was going, I seen all these, what I thought were eagle's nests at the time. I wasn't very aware of what they were. They were osprey, which can be confused for eagles if you don't know what you're looking at. And I thought, oh, that's really neat. They had these giant nests they were building. They were flying in these fish, and I thought, oh, that was something to watch. But when I got out to the bay, out to the water, I sat on the big rocks. Oh, it was the middle of, I think it was summertime sometime. I don't know quite what time of year it was, but it was warm. I remember it was warm enough. I was sitting on the rocks, And as I sat there, all of a sudden I seen the osprey. They lined up, and I laid back and I watched them come one by one. They flew across, they'd dive down, they'd get a fish, they'd bring it up, and they'd swing, swooping wings, and it looked like they were struggling, but they would get the fish back, and then the next one would come. And it was, I remember thinking, this is like watching like wildlife. I used to watch, I think it was David Suzuki or something when I was a kid. And to watch these birds fly and pick up these fish, I felt like I was in a TV show. Like it was all just for me, but there wasn't a soul there, just me. And sometimes in life, if we pay attention, we're given these gifts, these moments that are just for us. Think about that the next time you're out doing something and you're looking around, thinking, what's my moment? What's my blessing that I'm going to get to see today? Now, another thing you can do, if you have a rag, whenever you want something to look farther away, you soften it up. So I'm going to soften up some of these trees back here. Just make them look like they're in the distance. And then I'd see these clouds and I think, oh, I want to put some more clouds in there. So I'm going to start bringing some forward clouds. And I see here there's an edge of a cloud. So I'm going to put a big chunk of white there. Start that cloud. And then with my makeup brush, I'm going to soften it up. Again, it's all in the touch. How light you press and touch the canvas. Soft, soft. I'm going to bring those clouds down, add some more in. And the stuff that's close to us, we want to seem big and large. And the stuff that goes farther away, we're going to paint it really small. Just tiny little clouds back there. But the same thing with each cloud, we're going to soften up the edges of it, connect them together a bit. And move them up in size, small, medium, and large. So the sky, just like how perspective, we start large back here and work to something narrow, same thing with the sky. Small little clouds back there, moving up to big clouds in the sky. So over here, let's add a big cloud up in here. Make them smaller as we go. You know what? Let's have some fun. Let's try to make a tragedy happen, some failure. Because everybody's always worried about failure. I'm going to take some water and let's grab some blue paint. Why not? I'm going to drip it up on the top of the canvas. Just set it across the top. Let's try and make something tragic happen. Let's paint some tears into our painting. How's that? We're going to let it spill down a bit. Maybe we'll wipe it down a bit. Get a few teardrops coming down through our sky. Right into the water. Look at that. Let the painting cry a bit. Maybe it fell into the septic tank. You feel like that sometimes with your work. You're working hard to get it to work and all of a sudden it all falls apart. But sometimes that tragedy can be a masterpiece. So we're just going to touch it up. See what we get out of her. Get out of her. Sounds like East Coaster talk. Start getting that little bit of slang going. I'm going to put a little cloud right over the top of some of it. So what happens here now? Our mind, I've given the idea there's clouds, I've given the idea there's distance, I've given the idea there's water and moisture and rain, I've given the idea of reflections in the water. I'm creating an atmosphere where the mind can paint something in the canvas. And control. You want to sometimes take away the control you have with a smaller brush, maybe move to something bigger. So let's create a green. Grab some yellow. A bit of yellow, a little bit of Payne's gray. Mix them together. Create some kind of a green color. I'll bring this over in the camera mirror so you can see it. There, we got something to work with. A little bit of yellow and Payne's gray. So once we got that, I'm going to take this old house brush. I've had this brush I don't know how many years. I've cut the tip off a few times when I let it dry out, but I love the way it's all sort of smashed and distorted. Now I can take that wild brush, dip it into the paint, and start creating a tree. Look at that. Look what that brush does for me. It's even picking up some of the paint underneath. Isn't that something? You'd think I knew what I was doing. I don't know anything. I just let the painting take care of itself. I've learned to, as Michelangelo said, the painting's already there, we're just getting the rubble out of the way. So my brush and my technique is about putting things in a place that your mind can make the painting. Impressionist art. And then if I got a bit of the sky that too many tears, cover some of them up. A little bit of makeup, make them feel just a little bit better. Look at that. Isn't it fun to paint? You know? Students always say, oh, you make it look so easy. No, it is easy. You make it look so hard. That's the difference. The difference is you're working so hard, you got a little brush, and you're there trying to make this perfect rose, perfect leaf, and you're like, oh, it's not working. Because, you know, not even God makes things like that. He doesn't come down and make these perfect little leaves. He throws a bunch of stuff together, some dirt, and some different things, and lets them sort of grow together and sees where they develop, and makes some pretty beautiful stuff out of nothing. Well, we're going to take a short break, let this dry. I'll get some, team of painters come in, fix it all up, and then we'll see you on the other side. Well, welcome back to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. Well, we're working on this painting. We've thrown some tears into it. We've fallen into the septic on it. It's done a little bit of everything today. I'm thinking that maybe I want to put a fence in. For some reason, I got a feeling for a fence. So let's find a brush that'll work. Something I could paint a fence with. Here, this looks like it'll work. Let's make a fence line. I kind of feel like I want to have a fence right here. Put a couple posts in. I'm going to teach you some tricks to putting a fence in. So we're going to put a fence post right here. Maybe it's got a reflection. Anytime you do a reflection, what do you got to do? You got to brush sideways. Make it look like a reflection. Let's put a reflection of this post in. Rub it sideways. Nothing to it. Another fence post here. Maybe there's some smaller ones on this side. They're farther away, so we'll make them a little bit more narrow on the other side. A few little fence posts. And as they get down, they get a little smaller. Starts making my words sound a little bit distorted. So there. So we got a fence post. Now they're just brown and plain. So I'm going to teach you a little trick. That's what the show's all about, the tricks. Tricks of the trade. Let's put a branch into this tree here. A little darker so we can see. Separate the tree from the fence. All right. So I'm going to take some white paint and I'm going to smear it down the side of my post. So on each post, it's going to be nice and wet, a little white paint on it. And then take my rag and just touch it. What this is going to do, if you get up and look close, you can do this with a Kleenex or anything, it starts to create these sort of edge lines in there. And then you get some texture in your post with just a simple dab of a rag. So over here, put a little white on these ones. Because after all the posts would have some snow on them, right? Some snow on. Beautiful. All right. So we want to create more light in the painting. So what I'm going to do is maybe darken out one side. Let's make it really dramatic. Let's darken out this whole side of the painting. You ever feel like sometimes your life's getting too much drama in it? But really, it's just in our mind. Marcus Aurelius would get up in the morning and say, what am I going to do today? I got so much to do. Or maybe I'll just lay in bed and eat grapes. Why get up in the morning? I talk about this a lot. You need to give yourself some kind of purpose in life, something that means you have a reason to get up, you know? And it's not about money and work, because money goes away. You know, you start out as a young kid and you feel like the whole world's your oyster. You're making stuff in the forts in the woods, or you're making stuff in the sand at the beach, or you're jumping off some bridge, getting yourself in trouble, jumping into a river. But you're exploring every aspect of life, and you're creating, and you're moving towards something that feels good. You're meeting friends and you're having fun together, and you love that time with each of them. It's a special, special moment. You don't realize it at the time, but it's so special. And then something happens. You know, you're in school and they start telling you, oh, you gotta get a job, and you gotta get a house, and you gotta get a car. Well, what do all those things mean? They tell you they mean everything. That's your life. That's what it's about. Once you have a nice house and you have a nice car and you've made it. You know, that's it. But if that were true, you know, celebrities that have 10 houses and 10 cars, and they wouldn't be living such tragic lives and wasting them, and sometimes taking their own life with depression. Those things aren't what make your life. And as you get older, you start to realize that the important things in life are the same stuff when you were a kid: to create something, to move towards something that's fun, to spend time with friends and family, and those sacred moments that's all you have for memories as you get older. Not whether or not you have the biggest house or the biggest bank account. That's all a lie, we've been told. Something to make us feel good. Keeps you working. As long as you think those things, you're going to keep working towards them. Now, I'm not saying go out and sell everything you got and live in the street. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is don't put all your priorities in what you have, because that isn't the important part of life. Make sure your resources are earned in a way to make your life good, to move you towards helping family, helping friends, and making sure that you can, when somebody's down and out, you can do something to help in some way. And yourself, keep yourself healthy, because once you get older and you get sick, money means nothing. You know, Steve Jobs said he would trade all his millions for just that, to be healthier in life. So think about that. Are you being healthy? Do you go to the gym? Do you go swimming? Do you do anything except go to work, watch Netflix, eat popcorn? You know, how are you spending your time? And once you figure that out, you can start to figure out where the darkness is in your life and where the light is. And then you can start to repaint yourself, repaint your light by discovering your darkness. So I'm just going to keep adding darkness into my painting until I discover where the light is, which side of my painting it's on. And it's funny, the darker things get, the more I start to understand where I'm going. So let's put a reflection of that tree down in the water. Reflection of this tree down in the water. And what do we do when we put reflections? A little simple swipe. We always want that reflection to be looking like it's moving in the water. So anybody can paint left and right, up and down. Nothing hard about it. There's nothing really hard about painting. It's all just having fun and enjoying the moment. I'm going to go back in, make those clouds even whiter at the top. This time I'm going to try something different. I'm just going to smack my brush around, see what happens. Push some paint around here. Let the clouds sort of paint themselves. Put a little light on our post. Here, let's do this on a post. I'll show you here. Light versus dark. So on these foreground posts, I'm going to put a big chunk of white snow on this side. On the other side, paint in some shadow. Do you ever think about painting and why you can't do it? I think the biggest thing that stops anybody from doing anything, whether it's playing violin, painting, drawing a picture, building a business, whatever it is you might be trying to do, is telling yourself you can't do it. Thinking, you know, that's impossible or that's dumb. There's an old story. People will, you know, they come up with some pretty bonkers ideas. But who are we to say they're bonkers? I think one time about the guy who did the pet rocks. I'm picturing him. He comes into a room and he says, hey, to his buddies, I want to sell these rocks. What are you going to do to them? They said, oh, nothing. You going to paint them? He says, oh, no. I'm not going to do anything to them. I'm just going to sell rocks and tell people they're pet rocks. And I'm going to write a little note about how they do tricks. So, and they're like, oh yeah, that's funny. So what kind of tricks? Well, he says, what can a rock do? He says it can roll over. He pushes the rock and it rolls over. I can imagine the laughter and the joy. And he says, it's all about packaging. What if we package up this rock and tell people how to do the tricks with their rocks? What a nice gimmick gift that would be to get at Christmas, a pet rock. Can you imagine? You can send it to somebody you like or somebody you don't like. But I'm sure everybody said, you know, you're an idiot. What are you doing? This is never going to work. Told him every reason in the world why his idea wouldn't work. Now, I don't know how many of you remember, but pet rock sold millions. Everybody and his brother had a pet rock. They were in every store and every box. And it was one of those things that just caught on like a wildfire. Everybody had to have a pet rock. Now, why he couldn't just go out to the yard and get a rock and say it was a pet rock, I don't know, but he made millions. So even that idea, which I'm sure everybody told him was terrible and never going to work, turned out to be great. So whatever your idea is, don't let anybody tell you, you know, that's a terrible idea. That's never going to work. If it hasn't been done, chances are people are going to catch on and latch on to your idea and give it a try. Just out of plain curiosity, you know. Once you get one person to think it's all right, everybody wants to try it. We're kind of funny as humans that way. It's like art. You can go into an art gallery and there's some beautiful paintings there, and as an artist I can say, well, that guy took hours and hours and he spent, you know, detail doing this technique or that technique. And then another one I can see it's all slapped together and, you know, it looks like they splashed it out of a paint can, and sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But the price ranges. It doesn't matter whether the paint is slapped on, put on great, there's a great technique. Depending on the story they've created or the artist's name that he's built up as a reputation, or, you know, the motivation behind the people to say, oh, I have one of those, you know, just like I have the Cadillac or I have the Lamborghini or whatever car it is that you want to tell everybody you have. You know, once this artist convinces you he's got one of those paintings, everybody wants one. So half of life is just telling people the story they want to hear. So when you paint something, don't think it's good or bad. I know Vincent van Gogh never sold a painting in his life. But now, you know, they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars because the story has become great. And Vincent was a great writer and an innovator. And we're doing impressionism and stuff like this today because of artists like Van Gogh and Monet and all these guys that tried something different. They went out of that box that the great painters were in the old days, painting things to look perfect. We have cameras for that now. What we're trying to do now is create stories that capture a moment, make you feel like a place that you went as a kid. Like, oh, I remember being there. You know? How many people were at a snowbank by a fence when they were a kid? Lots. So these kinds of paintings relate to them, right? we're going to put in a little darkness down here in our river. Make it a little blue. It can't be a river unless it's got blue in it, right? You got to have some water. Something to tell the mind, oh, that's a river down there. Put a little bit of the water over top of the post so we know it's a reflection. See how easy it is? Maybe we got some little snow drifts happening out in front. Breaking it up so it's not perfect. We don't want perfect lines. We want sort of broken up things. Maybe we want to lose control. We might grab a knife. I love to use a knife to just sort of smear things and see what happens. Came down off the snowbank. Before you know it, you got these those little bits of snow. Now, I could individually sit here and paint each one on, but why? Just let this knife do its work. Beautiful. I like it. Now, let's add a little bit of a dark undertone under the sky. Another trick I'm going to show you. So when you're making a gray, if you remember the color wheel when you're a kid, any two complementary colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, they'll make a beautiful gray. So we've got a beautiful sunny day. Sun would be orange, sky would be blue. If you mix orange and blue together, guess what happens? Let's take a look. Let's give it a little mix here. Mix some orange and blue. You know what happens? You get a beautiful gray. Now if you put that gray into the clouds, that orangey blue gray, and use that as your shadow, the reflections of the orange are coming off the clouds and the reflections of the blue are coming off the clouds. Put a little white over top of that. So now your clouds are complementing the colors in the painting. You know, you could simply take black and make a blackish gray. Wouldn't do anything for your painting. But just by mixing a few complementary, so if you would be doing your painting in different colors, think about that, painting your painting in complementary colors so that you can mix the shadows that match. And we can get into the tertiary colors and all the secondary colors and things. In the foreground, we're going to make the paint a little thick and pastel-y. Texturing it up here. Why not? Let's grab that knife again. Didn't like that kind of patch there, so I'm going to grab the knife. A little bit more of, there we go. I like that a little better. Snow on our fence. Beautiful. I'm going to add some more white up here into this big cloud. Let's sort of fluff this one up. Now if we take a little bit of that orange, thin it right out on our brush with some white, move some of the light into it. So that orange, we're going to have that sort of reflect in the clouds. Put a little orange up through. Again, always trying to do smaller at the bottom as we move away. So we want things to look like they're narrowing down, going from wide to narrow, wide to narrow. And also we want color to non-color. So we want it sort of pastel-y back there, but up here, we're going to add some real light. Let's really go for the gusto. It's just sort of, you know what? I'm going to put that brush away. I'm going to grab a knife. Let's just try something really tragic here. Grab this blue water, just throw it right over the top with a knife. See what happens. Now I've lost control. So whatever accident happens. And look at that, much nicer. I think that's beautiful actually myself. I kind of like the way that's taken effect. Lovely. How else can we make that light show up? Well, one thing we can do, we can add a little shadow. Let's grab some gray, Payne's gray. We'll shadow down the bottom here. A little bit of shadow. Even shadow out those logs a little more. Well, I wish I had hours and hours to do this show, because we could be adding light and dark and constantly going back and forth. But unfortunately, again, we've come to the end of another show. And I hope you're really enjoying the show. And I love it when people stop me on the street and talk about the show and enjoying it. And I'm glad everybody's watching. And send a note. And we are going to be doing some great shows about some of the Christmas things coming up and helping a lot of people. So tune in each week and find out how you can give a hand. And thank you for joining us today on McGowan's Canvas Miracles.